Hey, everybody, here we go. Back for the Business Roundtable Podcast. Returning guests, Bil and Doxy. For those of you that may be listening for the first time for some strange reason, we'll give you a brief introduction and we're going to pick up on part 2 of our conversation about the 48 Laws of Power. But before we do that, just briefly, I'm David Carr. I'm one of your hosts here. I focus on organizational health, helping leaders, organizations, particularly in the AEC industry, become the most intelligent leaders and hopefully wield power well. I'll throw it to you, Bil, if you want to do a brief introduction this evening.
Sure. I'm Bil Hatch. I run a couple podcasts under Bald Spots Productions and help people with their leadership issues.
Absolutely. And Doc C, you're gonna lead us again. Brief introduction for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Curtis Cochran here. We are a mergers and acquisitions company, and we help build businesses and actually get them prepared to even exit or acquire other businesses. So thank you again for allowing me to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, well, you inspired us. For those of you that are watching us, we're going over the book. You can see it on my video here, The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. We covered the first 5 laws in our last episode. And so I would encourage you to go back if you have missed that one and listen in. And we had so much great conversation that we thought, let's do another part 2. And that may be eventually part 3 and 4 and until we get through the book, because it's so rich. And so, Doc C, I'm going to throw it to you to lead us in to Law 6 and kind of catch us up from last week.
Yeah, absolutely. We did the first 5, and you mentioned if you are just now joining us with number 6 here in just a second, I'd encourage you definitely to go back and listen to the first 5. It's quite interesting because what you think the law is or what this book is about, you might see it totally different. So as we talked about in that first podcast, let's go to number 6 though. Jump right in. Mm-hmm. Court attention at all costs. Now, this is what was really interesting to me when I first read this book years ago. Is visibility is power, whether it's good or bad. And we talked before we jumped on this podcast, and I'll start with you, David, about politics, which is really fascinating because if you are unseen or forgotten, that's a fate worse than death. And that's what this law is talking about. Court attention, whether it's positive or negative, at all costs, because that brings, guess what? People talking about you. And I thought this was really fascinating. What do you think about it, David?
Oh man, could this be more applicable in today's world of social media and everything else about how do we get attention about ourselves, right? Yeah. We're all talking about branding. How do we get the eyes on us in a healthy way? And so I just think, like, man, I'm interested in unpacking this some more because this is something that everybody knows, everybody lists, kind of like they're doing, but are they doing it in a healthy and effective way? And I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper into this conversation, Doc C. So yeah, as first I saw this is like, man, this is so applicable for today's world that we live in. Everybody's fighting for attention, and they are doing it at all costs. So
yeah, it really is. We'll jump back to you, David, in a minute. Bill, what's your thoughts on rule number 6 or law number 6?
First, well, the first 2 things I thought about were, one, President Trump is definitely following this law. Court attention at all costs. He is definitely doing that very well. But my other thought was that how does this relate to a law like number 4? Always say less than necessary. If you're saying the minimal amount, how are you courting attention while doing that? There's got to be a fine line there between the 2. And
that's a good point. That's a good observation. And yeah, you are right that I think Mr. President Trump, he's got this law. He understands this law. David, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters whether you're a Republican, Democrat, you name it, whatever spectrum you are. I think that there's always this idea. And I'm looking at the beginning of this chapter, Doxy, and it has this part 1, surround your name with the sensational and scandalous. I just think it's interesting, this idea of how are we drawing attention to ourselves. It says even a controversial image. Elon Musk, right? He's constantly drawing attention to himself.
Right.
And sometimes it's controversial, of how he's doing that, the statements that he's making, right? But he's got eyeballs on him, and people are looking very closely at his company. So, one of the statements here that stands out to me is it says, better to be slandered and attacked than ignored. Are you relevant, or are you polarizing in some way? Or are you kind of just, if you're just kind of all things to all people, maybe you may just kind of fall to the background, but are you kind of standing out somehow,
And I think that is really the intent here is court attention, which really means to stand out. Because if you're just within the mix of the crowd, I mean, you might be the best at whatever, fill in the blank. But if you don't stand out, I think this has to do with marketing 101, really. I think I mentioned on another podcast that I played basketball with Dennis Rodman, and I don't know if you remember Dennis Rodman. Do you guys remember?
Oh yeah,
him?
He was a character.
Yeah, and I sat right next to him, and we had a dinner before nationals, and he was the nicest gentleman you ever met. Yes sir, no sir. Everything. What he did is he took marketing in the NBA to a new level. And what he also did is not only did he bring the scandal, or shall we say the opposite of, say, a Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson or Larry Bird, he brought sales, he brought in tickets, he brought in people. And they wanted to know what his hair color was. They wanted to know all these kinds of things, and that's court attention, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other thoughts, Bill?
Yeah, no, I mean, we just got Charlie on here. I know Charlie is on the move, but we're glad that he's joining us, Charlie. Charlie missed our last conversation last week, so you get to come in, Charlie, and speak on this power, court attention at all costs. So I'd love to get your thoughts too. You able to chime in there, Charlie? Or are you on the move?
Yeah. There's no new. There's no such thing as bad publicity, right? So, if you're everything to everybody, then you don't stand for anything. So, and this is especially hard for me. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Enneagram. It's basically a personality test, and there's 9 different types, and I'm a type 2, which is like a helper and people pleaser, and I want everybody to like me, and so I don't necessarily help people for the sake of helping people. I help people so that they'll like me, and so that's especially hard for me to make a stand and to stand for something, as opposed to being different things to different people. Just so they'll like me, and that's manipulation. So that's a pitfall of mine. So absolutely, 100% agree with what you guys are saying.
Charlie, that's what's great about what you just said. I'll be right there. Is you recognize that. A lot of people don't even recognize that, and that's really the purpose of going through these laws. Is we want people to actually recognize that maybe some of these laws fit into our psychology, maybe they don't, but at least recognize that they do in fact exist in business, in politics, in life. And so that's actually good that you actually recognize that, in my opinion.
Yeah, Doxy, I want to question. I mean, the way we court attention can be different for different people and how we get it for them. We just before we came on here, you've written you're working on your 13th book. To me, that's a way of courting attention as a recognized author in putting this together, right? And so there's different ways. I think you don't have to be the loud, outspoken person on the corner necessarily, calling attention to yourself. There's different ways to do it. And so maybe, Charlie, your point is understanding your personality type or the way you show up. How do you do that? Because it's not going to be the same. Let's just use the Enneagram example. I have an Enneagram 9. It's going to be different. So I think it's important as we learn these powers, how do you apply it based on your personality, type, right?
Good point. Yeah.
Is that a question for me, David?
Yeah. Well, just more of a comment, Charlie.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. How we call attention to ourselves. So you call attention to people by serving them uniquely and addressing their concerns and questions.
Yeah. Bill, any last thoughts on law number 6?
Well, just that you'd be surprised how getting attention will get you into people's good graces. I know a few people with let's go with less than stellar reputation, less than stellar backgrounds. Run into trouble with the law. Who to go back to Trump. Now that he's had trouble with the law, they are much more amenable to his way of thinking, because it's something they can relate to. That they feel they got railroaded, and are feeling that he's been railroaded now, and in these legal battles. And it's amazing how his numbers especially among minority groups has increased, simply because he got into trouble with the law, and that got him the attention he needed from these important groups as far as getting elected from. Yeah. So I find it interesting that sometimes your what's going on in your life can get you the right kind of attention that you need.
Interesting. Any last thoughts, David?
It's funny because I was telling you earlier when we came on here, I really like the way this book is set up, where it ends each chapter with the reversal. So there's like get all attention at all costs, but then it cautions us about what happens if you go too far. And so I don't know about you guys, but I'm a SpongeBob fan. I like the cartoon; it's pretty funny.
Okay.
And there's this episode where SpongeBob rips his pants, and everyone laughs. They're like hilarious, and he's so funny, and they're generally hilarious. But then he thinks I'm just going to keep telling the joke over and over. So he keeps telling everybody, I ripped my pants. By the end of the episode, everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. He got it for attention at first, and then he kept doing it. It lost the power and the focus. So the reversal is be careful about how you're doing and bringing on that, that power if you're misusing it, So I like the caution of that,
Yeah. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
Charlie, any last thoughts on law number 7?
You're good, Charlie. Oh, you got some background noise.
Well, I was gonna. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Are we still talking about the attention? Okay. Yeah, I would say going back to just reiterating about taking a stand and not selling out based on what's popular or just trying to please everybody, is just to be unapologetically authentic, and having the courage to be imperfect, because so often society and the way we're raised is we glorify perfection, right? Everything is a competition, and so we somehow operate and carry this toxic shame of operating from this place where we're flawed and defective and having to be perfect. And so just being able to authentically show up unapologetically and having the courage to be imperfect.
Yeah,
I would ask maybe Doc C for a sec on that, a follow up, because one of the things on the part 2 of this is I get what Charlie is saying is you be authentic, but also do it in a way that it talks about create this air of mystery about it. So maybe not lay everything out there,
right?
Or maybe how you want to, not to manipulate, but just to create some intrigue or salt, if you will, right? Like I want to know more.
Yeah, you're creating an aura of mystery along this idea of courting attention is what you're doing, and it really this attention kind of can bring you what I think Bill mentioned it, what you want, which is fascinating, and is it a form of manipulation? Yeah, you could say that, but ultimately that's exactly what these people do. Using law number 6. Well, let's go ahead and jump to law number 7, if that's okay with you guys.
Good to me.
I really enjoyed law number 7. Law number 7: get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Now, getting people to do the work for you is one of the things I learned a long time ago, but I didn't take the credit. I gave them the credit. So, but I learned this a long time ago when I was working in the oil field with my dad, is that, hey, now if I can just get people to work for me, I can build this company better and so forth and so on. But let's start with you, Bill. What's your thoughts? I think we all can understand, you get people in place to do the work for you to actually build something, but always take the credit. What's your thought on that piece?
My initial thought on it is that's not fair to take credit for things other people do, but it happens all the time, and with people who are greatly respected. Going through history, people like Abraham Lincoln, greatly respected, had a lot of people under him doing a lot of good work, and except for maybe a couple of them, most people wouldn't remember the names of those people. Like maybe Seward, maybe that's the only one I can remember right off. But that's because of the Alaska Purchase. And there's all sorts of people like that. Modern times, people like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. These guys surrounded themselves and continue to surround themselves with very smart, very productive people who don't really get the credit they probably deserve. And we don't say anything bad about these people for it. Nobody's going around saying, "Oh, Bill Gates is taking credit for the work all these other guys are doing, and he's just such a terrible guy." No, it's wow, look at all the great work he's doing at eliminating malaria in Africa, or something like that. And same thing with Elon Musk, who I know to be a micromanager, and which is a terrible attribute to have. But yeah, he's it's like he's taken everything from what was it, PayPal to Tesla to now SpaceX, and people are like, wow, Elon Musk and X. And, it's like he's doing all these great things, all these remarkable things. And people, like or not like him, there's a certain amount of respect for the things he's accomplished. And he's definitely taking the credit for what the others are doing. And it's gotten him the attention. It's gotten him law number 6.
Yeah.
And,
That's a good point. Charlie, what's your thoughts on number 7 there?
Well, my initial reaction was like a little bit feeling like this is a bit egotistical, and I felt like that, that saying, give credit where credit is due, I think that has its place, right? Internally, to show appreciation for your people, always breathing EPR into them, like CPR, right? Like with air, EPR is encourage, praise, recognize. But when it comes to public facing, it is important to take credit. It is important to be the face of the organization that you represent. And your goal as a business is to make a profit. That's the ultimate goal. And of course, do it by while serving the world. And part of that is um, being able to be relatable as a human being. Like there needs to be a face of the company. That's why all the names that Bill mentioned, that's why they are the name that they are. Is we need a name to associate with the brand and with a mission. And the other edge of that sword with the credit is taking ownership and responsibility when things don't go well, even if you're not the one that messed up. But ultimately, like I said, the goal is to make a profit. So of course you have to surround yourself with A-planes and have the right people in the right seats on your bus, and get out of their way and let them do the work, but you be the face of the company. So 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Good point. David, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I liked in the book because it talks about me being coming from my wildlife biology background. It talks about the hyenas and the vultures, and it talks about they are not killing the animal. They actually go and take advantage of what was killed and eat that. And so there's a point in it's essentially saying join them, recognizing that there's power in allowing others to do what they do best. And that's where I kind of look at it, Curtis, is saying, get others to do work for you, meaning do the work that you're not the best at, allow them to step in and empower them. That's kind of what I do as a leader. Like, hey, amazing, do that. And they're feeling good about being in their zone. And the fact that you were able to provide that way and a space for them to do it is great. Oftentimes leaders get in their own way. And so, I find this as an empowering thing and not taking advantage of things. I kind of flip it around, or my narrative here is really kind of what Charlie was saying, is just let those people do what they do best. And you do what you do, and it's overseeing that group. And the interesting thing at the end of this chapter, it talks about Henry Kissinger doing that with his lower reports, and then he the opposite of that is giving credit to others above him. So know where you're at, kind of in the pecking order, if you will, which I thought was a great observation. But I really liked this idea of the image of the vulture.
Well, interesting, David, that you just jumped all the way back up to law number 1 with Kissinger. Never outshine the master, meaning the people above him, he gave them, some credit. And that's what he did. Yeah, that's a pretty good point. It's interesting how we use these laws as we go through it. Any other last thoughts there, David, on what you're talking about? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I mean, it's just, again, like we talked about last week. What I like about this book, Curtis, I know Charlie, you weren't on, but to me, it's like taking the world map and flipping it upside down. It's still right. It's just looking at it like in a different way. And so when you use the words the way they say it, initially, you're like you said, well, that's egotistical, whatever. But wait a minute. If I actually get people to do the work that they're called to do the best, and I'm out of their way, and then I can take credit for allowing and creating that space for them to do what they do best, that's a great leader, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, not only that, though, I think that what Charlie was saying, and even Bill at times, is that some people don't want to lead. They want to be a team member, and they want to put somebody else there that's leading. So they're okay with this idea of the president or the CEO or whoever taking credit because we're a team. But a lot of people, based on their personalities, they would rather work as a team. They'd rather be part of the crowd and be a part of that function, that machine, and they don't want to be in front, and whether good or bad, whatever happens. Would you agree with that, guys? What's your thoughts on that? I mean, that's how I took law number 7. Is they take credit, and the reason why they take the credit is because they're in that position to do so.
Yep.
And in the end, it is helpful to the people under if the face of the enterprise is the one who's getting the credit for it, because that keeps the whole machine moving forward. And if I mean, who cares if the guy under you succeeded at some project? They're not known. Nobody knows who they are. But it does give credit to the face of the company, to the company itself, if that leader is getting credit for some great thing, that the people under them has accomplished.
Yeah. Any other last thoughts, gentlemen, on that law?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the ego thing that David brought up. It's actually egotistical. The biggest ego trip, if you think that, like, to get it done right, you have to do it yourself. Like, if that's the case, you failed as a leader. You didn't bring on A players. The fact that you are the best at everything in your business, you failed your business. And so that's the biggest ego trip. So go out and get always be recruiting rock stars and let them do what they do best, like you guys been saying.
Absolutely. Good point. All right. Shall we jump to law number 8?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. I love it. Make other people come to you. And this is what was it. Use bait if necessary. When others come to you, it implies you hold something valuable. Drawing others towards you gives you the advantage and control over the situation. When I first read this, when it said use bait, I was thinking, wow, what is that all about? But you kind of can understand that a little bit, don't you? Let's start with you, Charlie. What are your thoughts on law number 8?
Actually, we use this analogy a lot in sales and marketing, is attraction marketing, right? And you have to use different bait based on the different type of person that you're trying to attract. And so if you're trying to attract a player, then you got to be able to understand what is their greatest need, what is their greatest desire, and put that out there as what you can provide. And similarly, if you need just somebody that's doesn't have as big of a role, then you use a different bait. And so I like that analogy.
That's good. David, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see this in sales and marketing for sure. Make people come to you. It's not attractive if you're chasing people down. And again, using the kind of wildlife idea that they talk about in this book about books or catching a bear or any animal really. It generally speaking, it's less energy if you can set a trap and they come in there. If you have to go hunting them and chasing them down, it's a lot of effort. And so we have to think about this. How are we showing up? Are we showing up attractive? Are we showing up something that somebody desires? And I think, speaking to small business owners, what I find sometimes is people try to create something in a vacuum, and then they're doing all this work, and they're like, oh, the marketplace isn't really interested in this. So you're like, you spend all this time and effort instead of being exploring and saying, what would be attractive? What would be the thing that would draw me into this? And this could be applied to a lot of different areas. I mean, I think starting a new policy, what's motivating people to come seek this out. And so I think this is a rich one, a very rich law to consider. I'm interested to hear a little bit more, because as I'm looking at this book and I'm just picking through it, I'm like, man, there's a lot here.
Very much so. Bill, what's your thoughts on number 8?
What pops into my mind is the question: if Muhammad won't come to the mountain, then we'll bring the mountain to Muhammad. And who is the more immovable? David mentioned about or Charlie, I don't remember now, mentioned about chasing after people, and it's extremely inefficient to chase after people. It's a big loss of time to do that. When there's so many more people who could do that. But if you're the immovable object, the mountain, as it were, then people have to come to you for it. That you become exclusive and specialized. And if you become that, if you become the specialist who nobody else can do what you do, then people have to come to you, and that's a lot more efficient than having to chase after people like customers and the like. So I would definitely say that's the better way to go. And the bait can be a lot of different things. It can be your specialized knowledge, what you have to offer. But it can also be other things like like your fame. I mean, you may not know anything more or better than what other people know, but if you get on the right podcast, if you get interviewed on the right talk show, then all of a sudden you're well known, and that is a bait in and of itself, that people want to be attached to the famous. It's just a big thing now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Bill, you're going in and out of all of these laws. I'm telling you, it's excellent, because what you're really saying is going back to law number 6, court attention. So if you're courting attention, and so now you have attention, maybe you have to throw a little bit of bait or whatever you specialize in.
Mm-hmm.
You're using all of these laws to actually benefit what you want, and that's a good thing, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, I know. One of the things, as I was reading in the book here, it talks about ways of baiting things and how you must master your emotions. And I see this all the time. This goes back to getting attention, too, Doxy, is people love to throw out a statement. And I've seen you do this, Doxy. You've actually done this really well on social media. You'll make a statement or something. And in here, it talks about controlling your emotions, because if you get people to react angrily or be pushed, they're like, "Oh man, I got to do something on this." So you've baited them in. You've drawn them in, right?
You're absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct, and the purpose of that is for dialogue.
Yep.
And really, not only dialogue, is to let them actually start to think for themselves and realize their emotional attachment to whatever that little plug-in is. It's the most fascinating thing, but it absolutely works. And it's really to create dialogue to get people to think, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think in marketing speak is, you hear about hooks, right? You're leading with something, like you're fishing, and so you're getting a little bit of a hook, and you're getting them to then, and especially in today's world where our attention spans are shorter, of like, hey, let me read the next line, and let me read the next line, let me learn a little bit more. So we have to be masters at how to, it's like, if you get a fish on a line, you pull really fast, what happens? Usually you can lose the fish. Right. So there's a point of like continuing to reel in a good way to actually land that.
Yeah. Charlie, any last thoughts on this law?
I got the K.
Well, since we were dropping quotes, I've heard one that talks about not chasing butterflies, because when you chase butterflies, they fly away. But instead, tend to your garden, which is, the personal development, becoming that leader that is worth following, and the butterflies will come to you. So.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Shall we jump to law number 9?
Yeah. I got a little more time left here.
Yeah, a little bit more time. So we'll try to get to at least 10. But number 9, win through your actions, never through an argument. I love this. I love this one. Bill, I know you got to leave here shortly. Why don't we start with you? What's your thoughts on this law?
Well, this one I'm still contemplating a little bit as far as what it means for me anyway. But yeah, you are better off winning by action. Accomplishment is is the best way to win. What's the old saying? Success is the best revenge. And
yes,
and it works for all level of winning, as it were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've talked about politics a little bit, and that seems to be all argument, which I guess is why it's so distasteful.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot you can do when it comes down to it in politics as far as winning by anything but argument. I guess you win you win your election by accomplishing things, hopefully. And but getting to the accomplishment in the first place is all about the argument. And
it's interesting, Bill, that you mentioned politics. You say that at the dinner table, don't talk politics or religion. It goes the same with both of those. And it's the idea, really, I think, in this law, if you don't mind me jumping in here, is that winning an argument really, so it might give you momentary pleasure or advantage, but really, if you want everlasting power to the whole thing, is where the action comes into play. Because winning an argument, I always lose an argument when I talk about my wife with my wife all the time, so I don't even fight that. But the idea is still the same. David, what's your thoughts on law number 9?
Oh man, this is a great one. I agree with you, Doc. You can win the argument, but you ultimately lose.
Yeah,
with my wife, I've learned that too many times. And I hear when I read this, I hear love is an action. It's a verb. It's much more powerful to actually have somebody feel loved than you to tell them I love you and they don't feel it. To me, the emotions. And so I've seen where, like you said earlier, Doxy, we're emotional beings, right?
Yeah,
that's a fact. We're emotional beings. And I've never seen anybody won over with a logical argument. Generally speaking, we have to speak to the emotions first, and then you can bring logic and other things underneath there. And so, speaking to the emotions, I think you demonstrate this, whatever that might be. And so, the more that we can demonstrate and show, and then back up if you need to with statements. But if you try the other way around, I have never seen, especially on social media, I've never seen somebody say, like, you have this argument, you see social media things back and forth, and everyone say, oh, I've seen the error of my ways. Thank you for your logical understanding. It rarely happens.
Rarely, yes. Rarely.
Because they're arguing, but they don't know this person. They have no connection. I've never seen you live this out. How are you? What's your life like? I don't know. You're just some person that's talking at me. And it is not convincing. So,
Charlie,
really
what's your? Yeah, that's a good point, David. I didn't mean to. Were you finished?
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, okay. Charlie, what's your thoughts on this law?
Yeah, I definitely agree that human beings were creatures of emotion rather than logic and reason. as much as we would like to think that we are. We make every decision based on our emotions and then justify it with logic and reason after the fact. And so that's why winning with arguments with your words is not going to work, because that doesn't give a good feeling. When you are like, actually, I'm just drawing parallels to, I believe it's Stephen Covey. One of the laws, 7 habits of highly effective people, or I could be misquoting, but I remember this distinctly, is win-win or no deal. If anybody feels like they're losing out in a conversation, then it's a loss for everybody. And then going back to talk though, like in terms of argument, we often hear the phrase "talk is cheap." It's not that talk is cheap. People cheapen talk by not being their word. So ultimately, it's about the follow through. And so, 100% agree that it's our action that speaks louder than our words, and that we just want to show up and actually demonstrate. Demonstration beats conversation. So.
Wow. You know what, Charlie, you said something in there right at the first. It was so powerful that we are emotional and we make a decision based on our emotion, and then we rationalize it through reason, which is really fascinating. And it really kind of goes back to number 4, always say less than necessary, because during an argument, it's just emotion, and we just don't rationally think. And that's why I always tell my kids, I've told my kids and even myself, and believe me, I make mistakes all the time on this, but I always say that before you speak, is it factual, is it necessary, or is it kind?
Oh yeah.
Because if it's factual, then go ahead and you can start. But since psychologists, since research actually say that about 80% of all dialogue between humans is all BS, it's not even factual. Well, it's interesting that your point is exactly, we make decisions on emotion, and then we try to justify it rationally or within reason. I love that. I just really love that. Any last thoughts, David, on that?
I liked in the book they have a statement here. One of the gentlemen, it's quoted, Benjamin Disraeli gentleman, and he says this: "Never argue in society. Nothing must be discussed. Give only results." And so I would say, one of the codes I live as a warrior trainer is we talk about real, raw, relevant results. Judge me by my results, not by the words that I talk. Everybody can talk. So I would challenge everybody, if you're going to start to argue, look at the results and the fruit of your life.
Yeah.
And that's where we should be judging and evaluating people.
That's a good point. Good point. All right, let's jump to the last. At least we get to 10. We did the first 5 in an hour, and I guess we're on track here. So number 10, I really think number 10 is really interesting. I'd like to get your perspective. We'll start with you, David. It's law number 10 says infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. What's your thoughts on that, David?
Well, it's an interesting one, because you might think that's a bad thing, in that, oh my goodness, how could you be unsympathetic to somebody that's unhappy and unlucky? But to me, especially unhappiness, maybe unlucky, is a bit of a choice and a way of being. And so the way I look at this is, there's somebody, there's a saying that pain is inevitable, misery is optional, in my opinion. We all will have pain, but there's people that purposely choose misery. They purposely choose to live a life of scarcity, of just as these people. There's drama around every corner, and what I'm saying is, they want to suck you into the world. Misery loves company, right? Because they are a victim. I'm a victim, and my victimhood is validated by somebody else coming alongside. Oh, poor you, or poor you. Oh, so sad, you know. And the more that they can get people pulled into that energy is just terrible. It just sucks you in and paralyzes you. So that we need to be, that infection is true. One bad apple ruins the bunch, right? It just contaminates, it goes and expands. We've seen so many zombie movies, right? Where that spirals out. So it's like, do not get infected, because it's only going to make you and others worse. So I think this is super important. And what you were talking about earlier, Doxy, we were talking about our understanding. We want to justify, before we start recording, our understanding, and we kind of are infected, and we want to have other people be infected, if you will, with this lower vibration of being. And so to me, this is vital that you extract yourself as soon as possible.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Bill, what about you? I know that you have to go off here in a minute.
Yeah, I gotta go here in a minute, but I think what's more important is not whether the person is in misery, because sometimes misery isn't a choice. It's whether or not those people will get help for their misery. My first thought, of course, was to joke about it and say, avoid the unlucky and the unhappy unless you're a psychologist. But there are, I myself have struggled in my life with major depression, but I found the help I needed and am doing well now. And so, it's, don't get drawn in by it, like David said, but it's the ones who won't be helped that you seriously need to avoid, because the others, if they're like, okay, I'll go and get some help that I need, well, that's fine then. They're not going to be among the unhappy anymore, and the unlucky are just miserable about the small things. And those you can avoid with no trouble at all. But yeah, I would say if they won't get help, then avoid them. If they will, then they may become a resource for you in the future.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good point. Charlie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this infection. Okay, see you, Bill. Thank you. I think this infection, it goes both ways, right? Whether it be unhappiness or joy and compassion. And so the unhappiness and what was the other word that you used, Doc? Unhappiness and what?
Misery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unlucky.
Yeah. So unlucky. Yeah. That's a mindset. That's a victim mentality. So there's a book by Jocko Willink. I believe he was a retired Navy SEAL. So it's called Extreme Ownership. And you become I don't know if this is from that book, but I've heard this quote: if you're not the problem, there is no solution. And the reason people are living in misery and unhappy is because they're playing the victim, and everything that's wrong is everybody else's fault. And if you flip that on its head and say, if I am not the problem, there is no solution, and take that extreme ownership, then it's transformative. Then you, in happiness and joy and whatever else that you want to experience, is not like somewhere out there as a byproduct of certain things that you do or have. It's that's what happens when we operate from toxic shame. Is because we believe we're flawed and defective, we start becoming human doings rather than human beings. But any state that you want to experience of joy or happiness, that is a choice in every given moment. We live as if our life is so long and we're gonna be around for however many years that we think that we're gonna be around. But the only real life we got is right now in this moment. And so really, how are you choosing to be in each given moment? And it's a funny thing you can ask my kids. Every time we go somewhere, they're like, what are we gonna do there? I said, that's not the question. The question is, how are you going to be? how are you going to be in wherever you are? So
I like that.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
My last thought on this, and really to kind of maybe summarize what everybody's talking about here, is that we're talking about these laws of power, and I think to maintain power, or shall we say influence, because that's really what this is all about. It's important to associate with positive and successful people. I think that is really what this law really is trying to tell us all, is that we need to. I mean, that's why we're all on this podcast here, is because we want to help. We know that we're fallible human beings. We know we make mistakes, but at the same time, we can help one another, as we do on this podcast, grow. As I think you've mentioned this before, grow exponentially, Charlie. I mean, I think you mentioned it on one of the podcasts, and I think that you're absolutely correct. Because we make mistakes all the time, but at the same time, we don't get depressed by it. Just move on. Just keep going, and that's what I think that these laws, if you keep reading them and going through them, I think that people will begin to understand them more so, like as we go through them. But any last thoughts, David, on these 6 through 10?
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you so much for leading us back, Doc C, on this. I thought, to Charlie's point, and I think this is a good place where this last law is interesting.
Guess we lost him.
I think somebody unplugged him. There you go.
Something there. Yeah. It put me on there twice, so there we go. We're back. I was left you hanging. No, so what was the big thing here? I was saying was this reversal law at the end of each chapter says there is no reversal of this law. It's basically saying that there's nothing to be gained in this particular one, or do it like Bill said, at your peril. And to what you're talking about, Charlie, you're teaching others about how to be. And if you ignore this law, this particular law, it's going to be at your peril and disservice. So be wise, and I appreciate the wisdom that we're seeking out here and understanding, Curtis, as you're guiding us through this. So we'll continue to definitely dive into this. We'll probably have some other episodes in between, and again, as you're listening to this, I would agree with you, Doc C, is that reach out to any one of us. We're sharing our journey with you, and so to help you, whether it's mergers and acquisition, whether it's the IT world, whether it's organizational health, helping be a stronger leader yourself, we're here to help you, and we would love to hear from you. So I just want to encourage folks to subscribe, listen to us on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. We do this every week on LinkedIn, so you can find us there, and also on YouTube. So I just thank you so much for bringing this back through this, Doc C.
You bet. My pleasure. I look forward to tackling the next group of laws.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie, for on the move and everything, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for hosting.
Excellent. All right. Till next time, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye now.
Bye.
All right. Bye now. Have a good night.